Mythical Monsters, or When Behemoths Ruled, Lore versus Cataclysmic Extinction, by Charles Gould. An adult-brained audiobook production read to you by Dunlop. Preface. The author has to express his great obligations to many gentlemen who have assisted him in the preparation of this volume, either by affording access to their libraries or by furnishing or revising translations from the Chinese, etc. And he must especially tender them to J. Haas, Esquire, the Austro-Hungarian Vice-Consul at Shanghai, to Mr. Thomas Kingsmill and the Rev. W. Holt of Shanghai, to Mr. Falconer of Hong Kong, and to Dr. N. B. Dennis of Singapore. For the sake of uniformity, the author has endeavored to reduce all the romanized representations of Chinese sounds to the system adopted by S. W. Williams, whose invaluable dictionary is the most available one for students. No alteration, however, has been made when quotations from eminent sinologues like Legge have been inserted. Should the present volume prove sufficiently interesting to attract readers, a second one will be issued at a future date, in continuation of the subject. June 1884. Note by the publishers. The publishers think it right to state that, owing to the author's absence in China, the work has not had the advantage of his supervision in its passage through the press. It is also proper to mention that the MS left the author's hand 18 months ago. 13. Waterloo Place, S.W., January 1886. Introduction. It would have been a bold step indeed for anyone some 30 years ago to have thought of treating the public to a collection of stories ordinarily reputed fabulous, and of claiming for them the consideration due to genuine realities, or to have advocated tales time-honored as fictions, as actual facts, and those of the nursery as being in many instances legends, more or less distorted, descriptive of real beings or events. Nowadays, it is a less hazardous proceeding. The great era of advanced opinion initiated by Darwin, which has seen, in the course of a few years, a larger progress in knowledge in all departments of science than decades of centuries preceding it, has, among other changes, worked a complete revolution in the estimation of the value of folklore, and speculations on it, which in the days of our boyhood would have been considered as puerile, are now admitted to be not merely interesting but necessary to those who endeavor to gather up the skeins of unwritten history, and to trace the antecedents and early migrations from parent sources of nations long since alienated from each other by customs, speech, and space. I have, therefore, but little hesitation in gravely proposing to submit that many of these so-called mythical animals, which throughout long ages and in all nations have been the fertile subjects of fiction and fable, come legitimately within the scope of plain matter-of-fact natural history, and that they may be considered not as the outcome of exuberant fancy, but as creatures which really once existed, and of which, unfortunately, only imperfect and inaccurate descriptions have filtered down to us, probably very much refracted through the mists of time. I propose to follow, for a certain distance only, the path which has been pursued in the treatment of myths by mythologists, so far only, in fact, as may be necessary to trace out the homes and origin of those stories which in their later dress are incredible, deviating from it to dwell upon the possibility of their having preserved to us, through the medium of unwritten natural history, traditions of creatures once coexisting with man, some of which are so weird and terrible as to appear at first sight to be impossible. I propose stripping them of those supernatural characters with which a mysteriously implanted love of the wonderful has invested them, and to examine them, as at the present day we are fortunately able to do, by the lights of modern sciences of geology, evolution, and philology. For me, the major part of these creatures are not chimeras, but objects of rational study. The dragon, in place of being a creature evolved out of the imagination of Aryan man by the contemplation of lightning flashing through the caverns which he tenanted,
Sample complete. Ready to continue?